What's good? It's Woog. Slowdive, the Shoegaze band, is about to release their 5th album, Everything is Alive, and I want to talk a little bit about the expectations here. Now, Slowdive is a band that came together at the end of the 80s. They had their debut album Just for a Day in 91, and then they had their big breakthrough, kind of their high watermark in Souvlaki. That was 1993. And then they dropped their 3rd album, Pygmalion, in 95, and then the band broke up. Now, the 2 vocalists in the band, basically the 2 leaders of the band, or the most prominent members of the band, Neil Halstead, who plays guitar and sings, as well as Rachel Goswell, also sings and plays guitar, and they both play keys as well in the studio recordings. But these are the 2 voices of Slowdive. The other members had broken up after that 3rd album, and then Neil Halstead and Rachel Goswell went on to create Mojave 3 in a little bit of a genre shift. But that was the story of Slowdive until they reunited in 2014 to play live at the Primavera Sound Festival. Again, that's 2014, and then they released their 4th album in 2017. That is the self-titled Slowdive album, and it was met with great critical acclaim as well. Sure, some of that might have just been the happiness among critics and the excitement that the band was back together and putting out new music, but it really was a good album. And if you listen to that Slowdive 2017 album, within the first 3 to 4 songs of the album, you could kind of get a crash course of the Slowdive sound. It goes from the very slow and washed out, just the washed out guitars style of shoegaze, in case of maybe the album opener, Slow Mo, or track 3, Don't Know Why. So that's one style of shoegaze. But then if you listen to like track 4, Sugar for the Pill, you hear a lot more of a kind of slow, down-tempo, almost trip-hoppy style of, we'll say, dream pop. It's very different than the washed-out guitar sound of some of the other shoegaze that you will get on that Slowdive album, which would be more akin to like the 2010s band Dive. That's D-I-I-V. Listen to their debut album, Ocean. Even though you could argue that Dive went way more into that shoegazy realm by their 3rd album. But if you listen to that debut album, Ocean, I think that that is one of the musical offsprings from a band like Slowdive. So yeah, Slowdive released their 4th album after breaking up for over 20 years, released the self-titled Slowdive album in 2017, and now we're getting the 5th album about 6 years later, Everything is Alive. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Slowdive, but I can't talk too much about Slowdive without bringing another shoegazy or dream poppy band into the discussion. And that band I had just covered in a 1-minute short earlier this week, and that is Cocteau Twins, who preceded Slowdive by nearly a decade. So Cocteau Twins was an 80s band that continued to make music into the 90s, whereas Slowdive basically made all of their recorded music, or started in the early 90s. And the reason I bring Cocteau Twins up is because Elizabeth Fraser, the vocalist of Cocteau Twins, she basically had almost disappeared from the scene after the Cocteau Twins broke up in like the 97. Yes, she returned a year later to feature on Massive Attack's song Teardrops. That's Massive Attack's biggest song, and it's from that Mezzanine album. And Elizabeth Fraser would feature on This Mortal Coil, as well as one of the Lord of the Rings songs from one of the first of their trilogy. Elizabeth Fraser featured on one of those. And one distinction that I would draw between a dream poppy band like Cocteau Twins and a more shoegazy band like Slowdive is, I feel like with Neil Halstead and Rachel Goswell, they have a lower vocal ceiling. If you listen to their vocals, it's kind of a faded or a subdued vocal that's almost like droning a little bit on the track, where the voice is kind of hidden and tucked within the instrumentation, whereas in Cocteau Twins, you've got like a powerhouse vocalist in Elizabeth Fraser, which allows the production to kind of open up to different possibilities. Now, Slowdive instrumentally, I think they're about as good as it gets in that shoegazy or dream poppy realm. Now, dream pop and shoegaze, there is some overlap there. They are both under the larger post-punk, very vague categorization, but there is some overlap. But I would say one of the distinctions between the two is that dream pop has as much synth as it has guitar on the forefront. So the instrumentation or the production is a little bit more pillowy and dreamy, blissful, euphoric, whereas true shoegaze, like some of Slowdive's work, Cocteau Twins has some stuff that's more shoegazy than others, but think My Bloody Valentine or the Jesus and Mary Chain, that 1995 album Psycho Candy. I'm talking about washed out guitars to where you don't even hear too much like guitar play. It's not the most melodic. It's almost like you could hit one or two guitar notes, just boom, and then it kind of cascades, and there's so much reverb and effect on those guitars that it kind of has this downpour, and you just feel like you're being drenched in that guitar. I would say that that's more shoegazy, and it's a little bit slower, even though dream pop is kind of hazy as well, and it could be very slow. Think Beach House. Beach House is, one of the most dream poppy modern bands going on, and I actually think that Beach House is a bit of a musical offspring to not only Cocteau Twins, but also to a degree Slowdive. So again, instrumentally, like Slowdive is amazing, and they do run the gamut. They do have stuff that's a little bit more ambient than some of their other stuff. Again, they go shoegaze, they go dream pop, and they go ambient, and sometimes they do a combination of those kind of sub-genres. But again, Cocteau Twins, and more specifically, the lead singer, Elizabeth Fraser, is just much more of a powerhouse vocalist. Like, she's got that, Cranberries, the late Dolores O'Riordan from the Cranberries. So she's able to she being Elizabeth Fraser, like that Cranberries lead singer, rest in peace, is able to kind of do that kind of Celtic folk style of playing and modulating with your voice. Think, again, Cranberries, think Enya, or even Victoria Legrand of Beach House when she starts getting into some of the higher vocal registers. Elizabeth Fraser of Cocteau Twins is that amazing. And by the way, she has recently made her return as one half of Sun Signature with Damon Reese, her partner and former Spiritualized member, Echo and the Bunnymen member, and Lupine Howe member. So look out for Sun Signature. I was very happy and ecstatic to hear the return of Elizabeth Fraser. But yeah, Slowdive is about to drop their new album, Everything Is Alive. If you haven't gotten into the band, give them a listen. It's a very euphoric feel when they really get into that groove, and it's kind of like a relaxed, washed out sound instrumentally, where you've got this it's kind of a wall of sound, not so much in the Phil Spector way, but those washed out guitars in their own right do create a wall of sound, and Slowdive is about as good as it gets when it comes to kind of creating that. The old band, The Cure, another band that could get into that mix. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on Slowdive. Heck, let me know your thoughts on Cocteau Twins. I can't wait to give this new album by Slowdive, their 5th album, once again, Everything Is Alive, a listen. But please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Who are some of your other favorite bands in this shoegaze genre? Please let me know in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you love music like I do. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.